All right, we're going to try this again. We're going to see if we get the audio. If you guys would, thank you for letting me know that you didn't have audio before. And if you don't, please let me know so that we can reset this. And I am over here in beautiful Chelan. There you go. You get to see it. We've had a major rainstorm, and of course the sun will be coming back out, which may affect the screen, but hopefully we'll keep it tightened up. So I decided to take a few days off. However, we had a ton of questions that came out, and with the questions, it just said, George, you need to do just a quick Q&A with folks. This way we can get some answers done. And again, I was just told we have audio this time, which is awesome. It's always nice to be heard. And with that, people are saying the biggest question that came out is, George, okay, so you said the sky's not falling. Although in Chelan, I think it did just a little while ago. The sky's not falling in real estate. Things are still going really well. Is it really still a good time to buy a house? Or is it a really good time to move down? Or as a seller, is it a good time, to move up? And the answer is yes. And the reason is this. So even though our market only has 1.7 months of inventory, and again, remember, a healthy market is 4 to 6 months. Okay, because we don't have a lot of inventory, we still have what we call a limited inventory market. However, remember, interest rates in January were a lot higher, and interest rate has a massive impact on your payments, right? So if you have the ability since January to today, if you can buy 10 to 12% more home. So let's take, for example, let's use $500,000. $500,000 just because it's an easy number, right? I can do the math really easy. Okay, so you've got $500,000. So if I can buy 10 to 12% more today, that means I can buy a $550,000 to $560,000 house for the same price, right? So if I can do that, or if I still buy that $500,000 house, again, just using that as a simple number, that means my payment would be 10% less. So that's, again, why we're seeing the median price come down of what is purchased each month. Okay? It's not that home values have come down, because remember, home values actually have gone up 3.5% to 5%, depending on where you're at. Okay? If rural, urban, Seattle, Bellevue, or the east side, versus down south, it just depends where you're at. And if that's the case, you're money ahead by making that purchase today. Now, the best times to purchase, and in fact, that's when I purchased my homes, is between October and the end of January. Why? Less competition, more opportunities for you, and sellers tend to be what we would consider a little bit more reasonable. You can get a few more concessions. On a seller side, the best part is you don't have a gob of people coming through that really are not that qualified or not that interested in your house. The people that come through now are truly sincere, legitimate buyers. And, excuse me, the ones that you need to pay the most attention to, because people don't come out during the bad, rainy, gloomy type of days unless they're really looking for a home. And so for a seller, that is massive. But the same point, even if you're looking at downsizing or upsizing, again, that being able to purchase 10 to 12% more home because of interest rate has a massive impact on your bottom line. Now, if you're interested in saving money, which most people are, that is something you want to take into serious consideration. Now is that time, all right? The other question, somebody said, George, you mentioned, what is a cap rate, and isn't that the same as an IRR, an internal rate of return? No, not even the same. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick analogy. One of my dearest friends, Drago Novistic, who's also part of Ability Home Inspections, we used to laugh and say, well, that looks good at 65 from the freeway. What we mean is, if you're driving down the freeway, and this is obviously not on 405 because you'd be doing like 10 miles an hour. If you're on a regular freeway and you're driving and you look over and you say, hey, look at that house, that looks pretty good. That's a cap rate. All right. And the cap rate is simply the net income divisible by a purchase price, and that gives you a return or a capitalization rate. And that's what cap rate stands for, a capitalization rate. It's a snapshot of what a home looks, what an investment property would look like, whether it's a home or multifamily or commercial, whatever that might be. So when you look at that, For a buyer, because it's a return, you want that as high as possible. But remember, the higher the cap rate, the lower the purchase price. The lower the purchase price, benefits you because then you get that higher return. That's a buyer. For a seller, you want the exact opposite. You want the lowest cap rate possible because that gives you the highest purchase price that that somebody is willing to consider. Now, on the Seattle East Side areas, you're going to look at a cap rate anywhere from about 3%, maybe you're doing really good, you're going to do 4%. I've seen some as low as 2.5%, and that's a really low return. So as a buyer, if you have a mutual fund, which one do you want? You want a 2% return or you want a 5% return? Both of them are low, but in that regard, that gives you a real brief glimpse of what a cap rate is. An internal rate of return, using the same analogy, that's where you pull off the freeway, you go inside the house and you do an inspection of this house and you go through all of the elements of the home. So you're taking an entire, look, what is my cost? What is it, what does the home really look like? And is it really, what I think it is? And then you can do the financials. And that's an internal rate of return because it takes in your actual cost of acquisition, any capital improvements, any updates you've made to the property. It'll take into consideration your hold time. And then, of course, your recapitalization, of your excise tax and your depreciation. And it takes all of that into consideration, all your selling costs. And we normally do it only over a 5-year window. It's really the most we can project out to give us what that actual return is going to be. And it takes into your income bracket so that as you're coming down and the IRS takes their little bit extra, and whatnot, it gives you that very clear, here's what I'm going to make at the end of the day. And that's an internal rate of return. Two entirely different things. Again, a cap rate only gives you a snapshot. Internal rate of return gives you the full picture. All right? Okay. Now, next question. Does a single family home make a good investment versus multifamily? You guys have heard me in the past saying, hey, a single family home is don't pencil. That's just all there is to it. People ask me, how long do you recommend keeping a single family home? I only recommend keeping them for 5 years. That's 2 rental cycles. By the time you hit that second tenant or the end of that second tenancy, the market has circled back around, and typically you're able to do a 1031 tax-deferred exchange into a different piece of property, or you can cash it out. And the challenge is that because of the cost, the amount that you have to put into them versus the limited rent that you get, that's why they don't make as good of an investment as multifamily or commercial. Now, you might say, okay, George, why would I buy single family then? Well, you would buy single family if you're looking for a shorter, appreciation window. Because remember, multifamily is based on like a business. It's based on income versus expenses. Okay, just like a business is. And single family, you might have a single family where you have a house here, a house here, and a house here, and a house here. And you say, okay, based on these 4 comparable properties, they're still similar in style, size, age, condition. My house is worth X. Okay, that's the difference. But if you're looking for just appreciation, let's say that you bought a home in, prior to 2016, where you're seeing those really, double-digit, appreciation, figures, you're going to be doing really well. And, that again, I would say, once you exceed the 10% rule, you got to get rid of it. Why? And you might say, George, what the heck is the 10% rule? Okay, well, the 10% rule is and again, let's use $500,000 for consistency and easy numbers. So if you have $500,000 of equity in your house, right, with everything that you've done and whatnot, and however long you've held it, like a buddy of mine, Serge, he's held a property for the longest time. He went through these numbers. He's like, you're right, George, this doesn't pencil. I'm like, I know, right? Okay, so he has $500,000 equity in his property, but he's not getting a minimum of 10% income. In fact, he's getting, $30,000 of income off of this property, and so it's not equaling that 10%. So based on that, he's losing money every month. And he needs to, what we consider collateralize the equity he has to get at least a 10% return. Because that's, in my humble opinion, the minimum return at any one time you should be looking at for an investment. Now, yes, you can take into the depreciation of your rental property, which has a modest amount. Yes, you get some tax benefits out of it. Yes. However, but what we're looking at is actual, what are you looking for? Are you looking for short term? I'm looking for an equity goal because then I want to, pull it out and do whatever you're going to do. Or if you're looking for income, you need to look at multifamily, commercial, because those are going to be your longer term, give you that retirement benefit that you want. Ultimately, you need to get above 10 doors, okay? Whether that's a couple of fourplexes, 5 duplexes, whether that's, 10 unit or more building, things like this, because that is going to give you the stability that you want. And you might say, George, why is it important to balance real estate against, you say, I have a bunch of stock options. I've got, this big portfolio and whatnot. Yeah, but it's not inflation proof. That's the problem. And if we figure an average of inflation of 3% per year, you're going to be going farther and farther back each year because it's not going to be able to keep up with inflation as effectively as multifamily. So having that balanced portfolio is going to be absolutely massive, to your retirement goals. And if you take a look at any of your billionaires or multimillionaires and things like this, they all own real estate. Why? Because they know it helps to inflation-proof your retirement so that you have that stability. You don't have to worry about money when you're, 75, 80 years old, as most people, well, actually, when people get into their early 70s, their accounts have dwindled and gone down to, a little bit scarier of a position. And unless you're looking solely for the purpose of, some government subsidy to support you, and if it exists then, I don't know if that's the best plan and something to consider. If you need a financial planner, Rod Tucker is a great financial planner to chat with. And also John Easley is another great financial planner to chat with. And if you want to chat with them, there's no cost. I'll have Marie go ahead and post both of those people so you can chat with them. Now's a great time to do it. Take a look at, hey, what are my retirement goals looking like? Do I have a marble in my pocket for retirement, which I barely feel, or do I have a baseball in my pocket, which is painful to set time and money away? Or do I also balance that with real estate and to help to mitigate that exposure? Those are things you need to consider with you and your family. That's a business plan that you need to be actively and proactively working on each and every month to make sure that you can retire like you want to, which is what this is all about, right? Okay, moving on. So we talked about single family being a 5-year-old. We talked about the 10% rule. This was a fun one. So I had a newer buyer says, hey, George. And actually, one of them was my nephew. And he says, Uncle George, hey, I've watched what you've done over the years. You've done really well, and I really like that. How did you start? How did you do this? Well, don't think I made this up. I followed the instructions of people that I trusted. When I was 20 years old, 21 years old, I had some very dear friends that had done very well. And I went and I said, how did you guys start this? What did you do? And they said, George, one of the smartest things you could do. This is the same advice that I've just handed down to 3 people, one of them being my nephew. And hi, Tim. Anyway, so I said, listen, and actually Ryan too, we had this conversation. So I guess that's 4 people recently. So with that, I bought they said, look, you know what? Buy a house. Buy a house that would be like a perfect little rental house. And then a year and a half later, buy another one. So you're buying this as owner occupied, which you get better rate and term, right? Then a year and a half later, you buy another one, you rent out your first one. Then a year and a half later, you buy your third one and either make that one a home that you want to live in longer, or as what I did. So then the second one becomes a rental, so you buy the third one. And then what I ended up doing is I bought a fourth one, which took me about 2 years later to do that. And now I had 3 rentals, and I let those ride for roughly 5 years. Then I took those, I sold them, and then I did a 1031 exchange, 1031 tax deferred exchange. And if you need to know more about that, we can talk about that on a different one. Just let me know by posting, hey, tell me what a 1031 tax deferred exchange is and how does that benefit me? I took those and then I started buying into multifamily, and then I kept those for a period of time and kept moving up the ladder, okay? At that point, it made it super easy. Is it scary? Of course it is. It's always scary. It's a risk. It's an unknown. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Until you do it, until you go through that experience, it's always going to be scary. But it's that courage is only willing to take the fear, setting it aside a little bit and giving an action. And that is what you need to do. Even if you own a home today, say, George, I really want to start this. I know I'm a little behind the 8 ball, but I still want to do this. Yes, you can still do this. And you can start with lesser expensive rentals, let them appreciate over time, do a tax-deferred exchange, 1031 tax-deferred exchange, roll them into multifamily so you can start building what we call inflation-proof investments for your retirement. If you need to know how to do that, speak to only a real estate broker that understands investments, that owns them, has been through it. You don't know how the car drives until you own it, until you've driven it. And if you have questions for me, there's no strings attached. Give me a call, shoot me an email, send me a text, and I will respond to you and I will help you. If you need social proof, I'll send you a couple of the investors that I work with. I really shouldn't call them investors, clients of ours that that we've helped through the process, and they will say, yeah, follow this guideline, and yes, he's telling you the truth here. This is awesome sauce, okay? Which is one of my favorite words. So if you have any questions, if anything is going on in your life where you need some help, let us know. Also, we've had a number of people saying, look, I'm doing a remodel, who would you recommend? Guys, go back to our website. There's no login. There are vetted contractors there. We've found out that a lot of people have been calling them, which is awesome. There's no strings attached. Just go there and you know that these people are quality people. They'll take care of you. We just had a client call in and say, George, for some reason, I got water coming through my ceiling. And I said, well, that's not good. And they're like, I know. So we went ahead and we handed them off to a couple of folks. One of them was able to help them out. The others had to say, hey, you need to get this resolved first, which was a little bit of a roof issue. And then we can come in and finish it up. But the best part is I gave them great information, I gave them great feedback, and they felt like they were 100% in control and they had great communication. That is what the vetted contractor list does. That's it. Their guarantee, good communication, best pricing, excellent quality of work. And that's all what we're looking for. And we want to make sure everybody has that. Which reminds me, I did have a cleaner reach out to me saying, hey, George, I am a 10 plus cleaner and I want to be on your list. I said, fabulous. Let's go ahead and I'd like to interview you, and I want to get I want 3 good referrals and 1 that says you didn't do a great job, because I like to see what's on both sides. If you pass, we'll put you on the list. So I'm waiting for those to come in so that we can add a couple of cleaners to it. So with that, hey Dana, how are you doing? With that, everything that is coming as far as the feedback from the market is still very positive. Yes, 2020 is going to be a flattening market, but don't panic about that, because that's going to benefit you in so many ways, because the interest rates are staying low. So what? We're not seeing the 10% appreciation or double-digit appreciation. So what? You're in this for the long haul. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you're flipping homes, you need to look at a different area, because the Puget Sound area, including now Pierce County, is not a great place for flipping, because there's not a ton of inventory. The number of opportunities out there is diminished significantly. You're going to have to look at Kitsap, you're going to have to look at Thurston, and these areas, you're going to have to take a look at demand, because again, that's what's going to be the biggest role. Those were the questions that came out. If you have any other questions about the market, about investments, things like this, feel free to ask me. Oh, a shout out to Troy Bean, one of my very dear friends. He's over here in Chelan, and he is, since Dave Logier has retired, Logier Homes, amazing builder. Troy ran all of his sites and is an amazing builder. He's going to be over here in Chelan building, and he's got a couple of projects going right now. If you are considering that, beautiful Chelan, let me know. We'll do an introduction, because he's one of the few that I would actually trust. He understands quality, and he is a 10 plus contractor that we will be putting on our list for over here in Chelan. So with that, you guys have an absolutely beautiful day. Hopefully the sun will come out here. And if you're going over the pass, it is a little snowy today. So be careful. And in the meantime, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.